I had a question about mercantilism, and I'll give a quick rundown of it real quick here. It's an economic system that Britain enforces and puts on within to her empire here. And Adam Smith actually argues against it. He argues that this has too much trade, too much trade restrictions. He wants free trade. He argues for a system that he calls capitalism. And under mercantilism, the goal is to acquire gold and silver. That if you have gold and silver, that your country can be wealthy, can be strong, can be dominant. And how do you acquire gold and silver? By having a trade surplus, that you export more than you import. And so there's going to be an emphasis on building up manufactured goods. That they want England to have the manufacturing. They don't want the colonies to have the manufacturing. They want to limit the colonial manufacturing, and although there's small scale manufacturing, like with some of like the iron development and stuff like that, but they actually restrain manufacturing, and you can see that with the restraining acts of 1699 that greatly limit manufacturing from developing in America. But the fact is, by 1699, there was actually very, very little manufacturing, and much of the manufacturing is just household manufacturing for household use. So this really didn't affect America that much, and really a lot of our large-scale manufacturing didn't happen for a few decades after we won the American Revolution. So a lot of historians argue point blank that the restraining acts really didn't affect America that greatly. Another part of mercantilism is to develop and protect your commerce. Um, there's always this fear about the Spanish boats, the Dutch boats, and piracy and things like that. And so you want to not just have a lot of trade ships. You also want to be able to protect those ships. And part of developing the commerce is cutting out the Dutch. The Dutch were some of the fiercest economic rivals to the English, always getting in on good trades and cutting out trade. And so they were especially trying to cut the Dutch out of their British North American colonies. You can see this getting enforced through like the Navigation Act of 1660, Navigation Act of 1663. The Navigation Act of 1660, and you probably really won't need to know the difference for the AP exam between the two. Oftentimes they're actually just labeled the Navigation Acts. But the Navigation Act of 1660 says that the boats have to be British boats, but they count British is not just from England or Scotland or Wales, but they also count it as being from America, and for having the and you have to have a certain percentage of your the sailors on board be British, but they count the American colonists as British for that too, and they also limit what trade you can do. There's several different things. Cotton, tobacco are two of them. But that you can only trade with Britain. They don't want the Dutch colonies. They don't want other places to be able to tap into that market. They want to kind of have a monopoly on all those goods coming out of America, the certain ones they deem the most important. And the Navigation Act of 1663 says that all the boats leaving the Americas have to go to an English port where they take off their own cargo, tax their cargo, and be done with it. Another aspect of mercantilism is you're supposed to acquire colonies. These colonies are going to provide your manufacturing base in England with raw materials to help your manufacturing. But also they are also then markets to sell to. And once again, with the Restraining Act of 1699, you won't have to compete with manufacturing if you're England within your own empire, because the colonies won't be competing for your manufacturing. They're just providing you with raw materials for your manufacturing and then buying your manufacturing products. What are the benefits? Well, America, a lot of historians point out the negatives, and I think the textbook did that quite a bit. But you look at the benefits. A lot of the American things like shipbuilding are subsidized, and to grow certain products. Britain says we need these products, or so we're going to pay you extra money to make it on top of whatever you sell it for. And also, there's eliminated foreign competition. I mean, certain products, that if you're growing them, there's no foreign competition. The British government will shut it out from the empire. So America has a monopoly on a lot of goods. And America is very profitable. The average white American is better off than the average Englishman back in England. So there are some benefits. In fact, a lot of the laws on the books enforcing mercantilism actually don't get enforced. That's called salutary neglect, because both sides are benefiting, not enforcing all of it. One example of this is the Molasses Act. It was designed to cut out trade with the West Indies, but it's not really enforced, and therefore Americans get used to not having all of the laws enforced on the books. And then after the French and Indian War, when they start enforcing laws on the books or making laws that they are going to enforce significantly, Americans aren't used to it and are very angry over it. So this is mercantilism. It's basically the economic system of the British Empire prior to the American Revolution.